Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books, and I've been covering Marvel very closely these last few months. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is not doing well. In fact, it's actually looking like it's going to be the worst second weekend for a Marvel film ever. This is a big problem. Now, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I don't know how curious you are. I have seen the movie. It's not what you would call a good movie, and it's something that you would think would never have happened to a Marvel movie when Disney took over Marvel. A lot of us were concerned that they would do things to kind of make it more family friendly, and they would kind of change the nature of some of the characters like Wolverine. You couldn't even imagine Marvel dealing with Wolverine, which they didn't. They didn't have the rights to Wolverine. But this is really quite bad. Coming from the wrap, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania box office shrinks over 70% in second weekend. Estimates hold Marvel's latest film will have had the worst second weekend drop of any superhero film, with $100 million plus opening. Let's get into the rest of the article. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. Really appreciate you guys. The mixed reception to Marvel Studios' Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is taking a greater toll on its box office than anticipated. The film grossed just $8.2 million on its second Friday, a colossal 82% drop from its $46.4 million opening day, and its weekend total is projected to drop 71% from $106 million last weekend to $30 million this weekend. That is a big drop. It's worse than Thor: Love and Thunder. If that number holds, Quantumania will have suffered the largest second weekend percentage drop of any Marvel Studios release and any superhero film with a domestic opening weekend over $100 million. While hardcore fans turned out as they reliably do on opening weekend and have boosted the film's audience Rotten Tomatoes score to 84%, the B Cinema score grade, and the 3.5 out of 5 post-track score suggested the casual audience interest would drop as it did for DC's Black Adam last year. But these weekend totals are below the 35 to 38 million that analysts had predicted, and suggested that Quantumania will not make much more than $200 million in North America as March blockbusters like Creed 3 peel away audience attention in the coming weeks. It is possible that Universal's Cocaine Bear played a secondary role in this big drop for Quantumania, as competition for general audiences, particularly the young male moviegoers that usually show up for blockbusters. Elizabeth Banks' R-rated comedy thriller earned $7.6 million on its opening day from 3,534 theaters and is now estimated for $21 million for an opening weekend. Backers had predicted an opening in the mid to high teens for Cocaine Bear, with the chance of reaching $20 million if word of mouth was strong enough, and it seems that this film has done just that. Still, early reception suggests a front-loaded run for Cocaine Bear, similar to the one that Quantumania is facing. While Rotten Tomatoes scores are generally positive at 70%, critics and 75% audience, CinemaScore polls return a tepid B-, with 95 minutes of a cocaine-addicted bear beating a Marvel film with all of the built-in audience, all of the multiple movies, now over the decades of movies. Not to even mention the decades upon decades upon decades of comics and the penetration of Marvel throughout world culture. And they can't beat a Cocaine Bear. But the appeal of Cocaine Bear may be limited beyond its opening weekend crowd, though it should be able to turn a decent profit against a $35 million production budget. Just in case you're wondering, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania cost a reported $200 million to make. God knows what it costs to market it. Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania has not done well. All you have to say about this is wait until The Marvels comes out, which they've now pushed back to November. And yeah, I can see why they'd want to keep that one in November. They don't need to have that movie coming out anytime soon. They need to figure out how they're going to promote, market, and distribute and save The Marvels, because if Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is going to have a really bad time at the box office, I can't imagine The Marvels is going to do much better. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. Now, if you have seen the movie, you might have noticed the visual effects are not quite as good as they probably should be for a typical Marvel movie. Here's why. Coming from Bounding Into Comic, Marvel visual effects artists admit Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania looks awful. Reveals studios shifted all the money and all the best resources to Wakanda Forever. After taking the risk to invest their time and money in catching the latest entry into Marvel's cinematic universe, more than a fair share of audience members found themselves put off by the consistent and noticeable lack of quality present throughout the entirety of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, including some of the very visual effects artists who worked on the film. From an overall aesthetic that looks more reminiscent of Spy Kids than a multi-billion-dollar film franchise, to the revival of Darren Cross as Humpty Dumpty-esque version of MODOK, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is plagued with questionable CGI. A shot of MODOK's bare bottom has been found to be so absurd, both in concept and execution, already on its way to the annals of meme history. And as many already know, whether through social media or by catching Marvel's latest outings themselves, this is not the first time in recent years that audiences have been put off by the poor visual quality of the studio's efforts. In particular, Black Widow, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, and Thor: Love and Thunder all left audiences baffled with their abysmal CGI quality. Sadly, for the few fans who still hold out hope that the franchise's future could be successful, it seems that things will not be getting any better in the foreseeable future. According to some of the very same visual effects artists who worked on Ant-Man's latest adventure, the film's lacking CGI was not the result of their team's skills and dedication, but rather to Marvel's reluctance to actually invest any part of their profits back into the project. This insight into Marvel's inner turmoil was provided by 3 visual effects artists, all of whom chose to remain anonymous for fear of professional retaliation, as per a technician who has worked on multiple Marvel projects and whose employer was hired to provide CGI services for both Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and its MCU predecessor Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Quote, in terms of priority, Wakanda Forever was definitely at the top of the list. All the money went to that. All the best resources went to that. It's understandable given the context with Chadwick and everything and how well the first film did, but it did diminish the ability to carry Ant-Man all the way through. The technician then further recalled how for Ant-Man there were a lot of editorial changes happening towards the latter third and fourth of the project that were just too late. There is a point of no return. Why certain things were changed, why certain notes were nitpicked longer than they should have been, that's on Marvel. But it definitely did cause a lot of tension, turmoil, and weight on everybody, and unfortunately, it's noticeable that there were shortcuts they added. Certain things were used to cover up incomplete work. Certain editorial cuts were made to not show as much action or effects as there could have been, likely because there just wasn't enough time to render everything. There was a lot of shortening and rolling of shots. Rolling is when you don't shorten or lengthen a shot, you just move a few frames in the cut. It really did feel like certain scenes were trimmed or otherwise altered to either save money, save time, or cover up the inability to get the job done. Turning to the question of why didn't we push back, the technician explained, you don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize your livelihood in the slightest. Part of that means when the executive decision comes down and the line that says, this is what we're going to do, you just assume you don't have the power to say anything against it. You can't be like, well, that's kind of crappy. Shouldn't we just do something better? Because that will never happen. A lot of us are sitting here thinking, the money is there, they noted. Why is it not coming down? Marvel spending a bit more money to pay more visual effects people wouldn't make that much of a difference for the executives all the way at the top. But it comes down to them not being comfortable with their bank numbers and us working until burnout. We lose out every time. Honestly, I equate it to human greed. Ultimately, the technician admitted, overall, I think what they came up with is satisfactory. It's a good placeholder for the beginning of Phase 5. But I think there was so much potential for the story, for the visual effects in general. I think the movie's getting the reviews it's been getting because Marvel is doubling down as much as possible on constricting quality. They're squeezing blood out of stones, and we're out of blood. Another source, an unnamed photogrammetry tech, offered a less doom and gloom outlook on the industry as the above technician, but revealed that such mismanagement is par for the course within the industry. I wouldn't say other projects necessarily took priority or that morale was particularly bad, although one of my coworkers actually became unhappy because of the lack of work he was given on that movie. He spent days on standby only to end up doing nothing, and this went on for months. Our working conditions are often less than ideal, and Quantumania was just another in a long line. This Marvel Studios farmhouse was further detailed by Vulture's third source, a visual effects artist whose portfolio includes a number of superhero films from across the last 10 years. According to them, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania suffered this drop in overall visual quality because Wakanda Forever took precedent. It felt like the higher-up and supervisor roles were shifted around to put that on their plates, and there was a smaller team working on Ant-Man. It was on the back burner. Less of a pressure thing, said the artist. Speaking to the threequel's actual development process, they further recalled maybe the director had an idea of what he wanted, but he wasn't 100% clear. We had a rough environment that we were sticking a few main characters in. At that time, we weren't told where the characters should be in that environment. We were just going with what felt right. Then there were times that we were creating an actor's entire action, like Ant-Man moving across something, they said. And you think, why didn't they film it the right way or how they wanted in the first place? Why are we having to redo and recreate? Why do we have to Frankenstein together an actor's performance? A quick shot that maybe takes 2 seconds would have to be redone 20 times to get the look they wanted. There was a lot of reworking, a lot of inefficiency, the artist stated. I ended up taking over and reworking a large portion of other artists' work, which is not how things usually go when you're working for other studios. Ultimately, they concluded that the film's problems could have been alleviated if there could have been more people involved in the project, maybe more money spent. With a lot of these projects being worked on simultaneously, resources become thinner, the insider asserted. The quality starts lacking. You can't expect all the visual effects companies to give the highest quality work, especially if you're going to do it on a lower budget. And that's really what this comes down to. A complete mismanagement of the content and really a lack of care for what the fans are going to think of this content when they release it. The numbers are going down. This is the biggest drop they've ever had for a $100 million plus opening movie. What do you think is going to come next for Marvel? Do you think they can continue to release these movies one after another, and get these negative results? Or are they going to do essentially what they did with Star Wars? Slow the releases down further and further and further until basically there's just, one movie a year, maybe one movie every 2 years? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think they're going to figure this out? I think this is going to attract more interest from their activist investors like Nelson Peltz, who want to see changes at the company, because this kind of situation where they own these franchises, but they just keep doing terrible versions of them, whether it's the story, the visual effects. There was some talk that there might be an Ant-Man 4. How could there be an Ant-Man 4? If you've seen Ant-Man 3, you know that there's really no way there could be an Ant-Man 4. It would make literally absolutely no sense. Although I have heard recently they are doing an Eternals 2. So we'll have to see what happens. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. I really do appreciate your comments. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up. And I'll see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.